Coming up on That's a Great Point.
Give yourself the grace to say no.
There's all of what you just said, everything, and walking into, I think not a lot of folks across our country will associate the term safe space with Thanksgiving dinner.
No.
I don't think those two correlate for a lot of homes. For the ones that do, great. I think a key ingredient in walking into these dinners for anyone listening in is intentionality. Before you go to the dinner, before you show up, how are you going to show up? What do you hope for in this to get out of this dinner? Right? Is it company of your loved ones? Is it just to see them, to see a smile on their face, to break bread with them? Or is it to convince them and convert them?
Hello, everybody. On today's episode of That's a Great Point, we're talking about setting up healthy boundaries to protect our own inner well-being over the holidays. We're talking about how many times the difference between a good job and a great job is the people we're with. We talk about outgrowing relationships. We talk about the metaphor of faking orgasms within our relationships. No, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. No, I'm fine. Serious. It's a fun episode. Thanks a bunch for playing along. Enjoy. Welcome to That's a Great Point, the attitude adjustment for your soul, where co-hosts Alina Doran, Michelle Aalbers, and Lee Smart discuss deep topics around a life well lived. Let's start the show.
The button has been pressed.
I can tell.
I can tell.
That's what she said.
Hang on, let me try.
Your mic mutes that. Your mic mutes that.
Oh, really?
I know what you're doing, but it mutes it.
I do not know. Is this a relaxation technique?
Welcome to the show.
That's a great humming. Humming is a wonderful stress relief technique. So I applaud you, Lee.
Oh God.
Cheers, mate.
So
cheers.
We're riding high. I like it.
What are we drinking this morning?
I actually have coffee right now, but I'm switching to tea shortly.
What kind of, do you have milk in there?
No, just plain old straight up black coffee.
Okay. This is black coffee with cashew milk and a sprinkle of cinnamon. And Lee, you have
amino energy and bulletproof greens.
Oh, now you make me want to make bulletproof coffee.
It's good stuff.
I haven't had it in so long.
It's good stuff. Yeah.
Oh, you just take any
bulletproof
coffee.
greens are actually pretty tasty, and they have a lot of the mushroom powder in it. The lion's mane, and whatnot. I do find that.
Reishi?
Yes. My brain does work a little bit better whenever I ingest said substance.
Well, I was going to say, with bulletproof coffee, isn't it just making regular coffee and then putting a bunch of butter in it?
Yes.
There's a lot more to it than that.
There's more to it? Okay.
Yeah, there's some frothing and foaming to it.
There's seasonings.
Really?
Yogi golden coffee, I don't know. I have a recipe somewhere. I'll send it to you. It's amazing. It's like got nutmeg and cinnamon and like a whole bunch of ginger, a whole bunch of yummies.
Really?
Ayurvedic
well,
stuff.
I have not had authentic bulletproof coffee then before.
I am looking to always up my coffee to make it dual purpose.
I'll find it and send it.
Optimize it.
Tanya and I gave up coffee for a little while. Just it's one of those, want to make sure that our substance isn't controlling us, that we're controlling it, like we're having it where it's not having us. So every once in a while we'll quit and just abstain, fast from, especially those ones that can grab hold and make you reliant on them. I have like a general intention of if I go out in the wilderness, if I'm completely without, I want to make sure that I don't have to go through a withdrawal period. I don't want to have substance to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I
That
like
makes
to
so much
be
sense.
independent. I'm a survivor.
I'm a caffeine addict, so
Hmm.
I know it.
Cool. So we're riding a high from
Oh,
a stress management webinar last night, and
yeah.
we had some pretty amazing takeaways from uh, the whole thing. A lot of stuff got brought up that I didn't expect to be brought up, but it's awesome how we can go into conversation and things pop up, and you're like, "Oh yeah, let me tell you about items 1 through 20 that I just thought about, thanks to you, what you just said."
Yeah.
It was great.
What are
It
your
was great to get
takeaways?
the feedback from folks was it was lovely. Lovely to hear people say things like I don't want to leave. It's like I have
Yeah,
to,
that's a good sign.
right? Like I have to
Something happened
feed
that was good.
I have to feed my kids dinner. I don't want to leave, but I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it also points to like the three of us and how we engage and where our priorities are. Like it's about community. And one of the biggest bits of feedback we got from most of the people, if not all of them in the room, certainly energetically because they stayed, is this is a community I don't want to leave. I want to be in time and space with these people.
Mm.
And that for me, forget the content. For me, that is a win because that is perhaps one of the most powerful things you can invite into your life is just good
Oh,
frickin'
oh,
people.
oh.
It's so powerful. It's a theme that keeps coming up, not just when we talk about it, but in my life
Mhm.
over and over and over. Just how much I underestimated the power of it and how long I spent living into this. I can do it by myself. I don't need. I'm okay on my own.
I got you, boo.
Yeah.
Ditto.
So this actually just came up in client conversation this morning, right before we came here, in that I am trying to plan out my life and I want to make sure I do all the right things to make sure I get what I want out of my life. And so, all right, as you're planning your goals and your steps and everything, who do you want to be while you're traveling?
Hmm.
And it's like, oh yeah, that is the bigger piece of the equation, isn't it? Like what you do doesn't matter nearly as much as just how you show up.
Absolutely. 100%. I don't know why I'm thinking about goes back to like work stuff, but I was in a profession that I knew wasn't the right fit for who I am for a long time. One of the positions I picked was because I loved the people I'd be working with and I loved my team. I didn't love the actual work. I know I didn't love the actual work. I knew it before I accepted the offer, but I met the people I'd be reporting to and I'd met the people who'd be reporting to me. And I said, these are the people I want to spend my time with. And it was, an absolutely worthwhile trade-off. You do the work that's not as exciting, but it was lovely to be with them. And now, years later, I've pivoted my career like 3 times since then. We still get together.
Mm-hmm.
We'll text, we'll support each other. I know that if any of them needed anything, like the others would be there for them. And yeah, community, who you're journeying with and how you show up
Yeah,
is
that's why
most of it.
the business books all talk about culture so much. Like, what kind of culture do you have in your industry? Because if you have people that you enjoy being around, it can make even the worst job bearable. Like, how many jobs have you had
Absolutely.
over your life that um it's a great job, and then a couple of key people move away, and all of a sudden it's a terrible job?
Sure. Well, I'm thinking even, in relationships, if you're with someone and you're happy to be in their company, folding laundry together can be
Mhm.
fun. It can be a bonding experience, be pleasant. right? And doing anything, going grocery shopping, the most, mundane, everyday little things can be enjoyable because of the company and how you both show up. It it's most it's most of everything, right? Energy and community, who we're with.
Word.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's plenty of people out there who are in a job that they don't necessarily love, but the community of the job make it better. And that job gives them the stability to live the life they want. And that works. Like
Absolutely.
not everybody's purpose is aligned with their profession. It
100%.
shows up in a different way. And I think the point that we're all making is it's the freaking people. And how you show up within that and the choices you make in your
Mhm.
perspective. Like, I love that you use the laundry example, how we show up in
Mhm.
doing laundry, what our
Yeah,
perspective is there changes what kind of task that is.
it does. And something I didn't know until so much later in my life is that you can craft your community. It was a novel concept. Like, you can create your world. You can surround yourself with people who are a plus in your life and reduce the noise of the people who are a minus in your life. You can just do that. That's a choice.
Key piece of
You know,
growing as an individual is whenever we start to shed the old stuff, the old I don't know. I'm just thinking about like a snake shedding its skin to grow larger.
Mhm.
Sometimes that skin is very, very akin to the relationships that we keep. Because some relationships we just grow out of, we grow away from. And to hang on to them out of nostalgia can keep us held back.
It can, and there's a lot of choice in there, right? There's a gradient. It isn't in or out of my life. It's maybe we dial it down a bit. Maybe we reduce exposure,
Exactly.
right? Maybe we limit to certain topics. Maybe I leave certain topics off the table because I, as a grown up, I'm learning to draw boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Dan talks about that in healthy boundaries classes. And he's like, we're not burning bridges, but we are salting fields and nothing grows here anymore. So this salted field, we don't go there anymore.
Mm.
We can go to a bunch of other places, but we don't go to that
Absolutely.
one. And
I
it's not a
love
burnt
that.
bridge where we're hard feelings and we don't talk anymore and we can't get to each other. It's just
Yep.
this field is closed.
I like that.
Yeah,
I
we're
like
not trying to shun people. That's a very, very adolescent way to go about it. Oh, you're no good. So fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a vengeful, angry,
Mm.
sticking your tongue out kind of vibe. It's here's where I am now, and you're welcome here. But I don't live there anymore.
I think
Well,
the hardest, oh, go ahead.
what's that?
There was a pause. Never mind. Go ahead.
There was a pause. This is very topical because we're in October. I'm looking at the calendar. In what, a little over a month, we've got Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving holidays coming up with all the family celebrations and like reunion with, friends, with like cousins and uncles and aunts and people who knew us since we were little. And that things come up during those days.
Drama time. Yeehaw. So we had a stress
Or
management webinar last night. Now all of a sudden we're going to talk about stress. Why on earth would we do that?
Because it's a daily thing. It's like I took the webinar. Am I not done? Is this That's it? Okay.
I have to use what you taught me. How evil of you to make me do such things. I thought you were going to give me the button.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
easy button is one of the most tempting things for humans. Everyone wants it and it doesn't even exist.
Yep.
It does, but it takes work to find it, to get there, to like understand that like life doesn't have to be as hard as you're making it. And also there's no easy button. It'll get easier as you do the work, but it's
Mm.
not easy.
I've ordered mine. It's coming next week.
Oh, beautiful. Have fun with that.
It is literally arriving next week. I will be pressing it.
So It made me think of a box I used to keep on my desk at our shop. It was for the man who has nothing, now something to put it in. And all it was a cube with a lid. You'd open the lid up, and it was just a block of wood. So there was nothing, you couldn't even put anything in it. Uh, and that's about how the easy button works. There's nothing in it. You press it, nothing happens. Um,
That's hysterical. My uncle kept asking her what she wanted for Christmas every year. She kept saying nothing. So he literally wrapped up a box with nothing in it other than a poem about nothing.
mm,
It was Christmas, talk about family drama, but it was a little bit hysterical and like lesson learned. You know what I mean? Oh, it was just like awkward family moments.
Yeah, well, he heard her.
Yeah.
He definitely heard what your aunt wanted.
Yeah.
That nothing is something.
Yeah. Careful what you wish for.
Yep. Yeah.
And be willing to ask for what you want.
yeah.
No, I want nothing.
Yeah, that's it's almost kind of like faking your orgasms, right? Um, you fake your orgasms, then nobody knows actually what you need to get what you need. So how are we supposed to, if that's the feedback we're getting, then how on earth can we possibly do what it is that you're craving? I feel like there's more behind this. I'm
What
not
is this
wording it
concept?
well. The
Faking? Can you
don't,
explain it to me?
yeah, that don't fake your orgasms.
What is that? What is faking?
I saw a meme or read something somewhere where they're like, I don't understand why anyone would ever do that. Who does that help? Certainly not you.
Well, yeah, well, it's the
not
whole
helping
idea.
anybody.
Men do
Like,
this
there's no
shit all
point.
the time in that, hey, is everything okay? Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's literally faking your orgasm.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
fine.
I like that. I'm great.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, it's fine. It's okay. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Oh God.
I think
I cannot roll my eyes hard enough right now. Like, ugh.
they don't go up any further.
Yeah.
Making a
Yeah.
Valley girl jealous over here.
Well, yeah, it's you don't want to say your whole reaction, right? So because you're afraid to step on someone, afraid of a reaction, afraid to disappoint,
Mhm.
afraid to confront, right? Wanting to just get the uncomfortable situation over with. So you step on yourself
Yeah.
to
Do
do
you want to
that.
get real, like really real and really deep in this moment? Like that screams, I don't believe I deserve this. I don't have self-worth. I don't have self-love. I don't consider myself in any of my decisions.
Mhm.
If you look at it from a guy's perspective, I mean, guys aren't the only ones that do this, but it's more typical for the males to have some form of a negative feeling and not be able to translate what that data is.
Mm.
So I can't speak to it. I don't know exactly what I need. So it's fine. It's great.
Mhm.
So
I mean, to be fair, that could be the same thing for a woman faking an orgasm, but I don't think that's what we're talking about for that.
I think we're talking about more generalized idea, using it as a metaphor for
exactly.
when we step on ourselves to
100%.
either because we can't name it, because we don't know enough to understand yet in this
Mhm.
moment. We don't have the words, they're not here yet. Or we know what it is and we just don't want to go there because we want to deflect.
Well, in that distinction, there's two totally different things.
Yes. Yes.
That's a
Same
key piece whenever you
reaction.
mentioned going into the holidays and being with relatives. If we don't know what we need, if we don't have that emotional intelligence within ourselves, then we don't know how to speak to our own needs.
Oh,
And we're
yeah.
not born with emotional intelligence. Some people have a higher aptitude to naturally lean towards it. I didn't. This was required a significant amount of study and learning for me to be emotionally intelligent. I'm not saying I'm any good at it now, but I'm significantly better than what I was. I remember when I was going through some of the worst of my moments back whenever I had my massive burnout and ended up in the hospital, I would get angry at Tanya for not telling me what it was I was feeling. That's it's like, you should know what I need. You should be able to read me. Hell, this happened last weekend. Fuck, a few years ago. This happened last weekend. I was stressed out. I was in go mode. I have things to do. I need you. I'm full on bull in the china closet bulldozer mode. And she's like wanting to help and kind of clingy a little bit, just like, I see you're upset and I want to be there for you. I want to help you. And I'm just bulldozing right over, right? And it ended up leading into a fight just because I didn't stop long enough to think, why am I upset? Why am I going so fast? And whenever we finally had that breakdown fight, it's like, shit. If I'd have just slowed down for a few minutes and got clear on what it was I needed in that moment, I could have been open and available to be helped.
Well, I'm thinking about like the complexities between just two people.
Mhm.
That's just you and Tanya. And you were able to be there for each other through this whole arc of, a disconnect. You didn't stop. You kept going. Tanya was trying to help. Disconnect. Then you had a moment of self-awareness. Then, right, you have a confrontation, discussion, resolution, right? That whole arc. When you're in a group dynamic, like at a family dinner, right, over Thanksgiving, and you've got folks at the table who you don't see every day, who you're not going to have that kind of time with, you're not going to have the luxury of that arc. And it's not a singular, sequential one at a time. It's multiple people who might trigger each other in different ways. You might get triggered in different ways. That begets a storm. And this past weekend, I had a preview of what that can look like. Without revealing any personal detail, I got together for dinner with dear friends, like all care about each other deeply, know each other for a long time. And a very uncomfortable topic came up: politics, which can definitely come up at family dinners and Thanksgiving tables around the country. And it got really uncomfortable. And friendships of many years were about to be compromised. And it was painful to see. There was tension you could feel. A number of folks could feel it in their chest, feel it in their bodies. At one point, there was conflict on the far left side of the table, literally, not political metaphor. And then
I was wondering if this was a metaphor or not.
No, on the left end of the table, there's conflict. On the right side of the table, there is another conflict with another group of people. Voices are at a decibel level I haven't heard from these people, except for when we used to go dancing, like at clubs, because you have to scream over crowds. And then there's a few of us in the center, again, not a political metaphor at this time. And we are noticing the folks in the middle that I have no interest in partaking in either discussion. And I'm kind of hurting to see my friends fighting. And I am feeling the tension and I'm totally uncomfortable. And the other folks at the middle of the table felt the same way. So we left the table. We didn't want to sit at that table anymore.
So y'all are the libertarians then.
It could easily be a political metaphor, but it isn't. We leave the table, we move to the living room area, sit on the couch, and start talking about renovations and interior decor and window installations and anything else that's neutral and calms the body down. And one of the friends in this small discussion that I was in commented how, she'd had a very, very intense work week. She has no interest in, she already had chest pains and tension from the stress. It was enough. She came to have a little bit of, to have the opposite of that, right? To be in community with people who care and know her and eat together, right? Break bread and share laughs. And something. And I tried to break the tension with completely inappropriate, adult humor. And sometimes that has worked in the past when we get a little far into like very serious topics that get tense. This had no chance. None.
Okay.
None.
So there's a lot to pull from your story, and that
Yeah.
I don't think we should avoid talking about politics. I don't think we should avoid talking about religion, because this is just avoidance of whatever. And that could be a healthy discussion if we know how to go into that discussion well. So the number one question I like to ask myself when I'm having those kinds of discussions, like, what would have to be true for me to believe what they believe? So now all of a sudden we're removing the need to be right. We're removing the divisiveness. It's like, now I'm gonna start to look at things from their perspective. I'm gonna be curious about what's going on their side. And what would have to be true for me to believe with that? Now all of a sudden we're open to discussion, because you can go into a discussion with curiosity. I know Sam House led a group recently where he's trying to teach the far right and the far left political how to get in a room and have discussions that are fruitful, to where we can remove this need to be right versus wrong. And a lot of it's, you can use the analogy of sports teams. That sports team over there isn't with us, so therefore they are evil, they're wrong, they're bad, we're going to crush them. And how useless of a concept that is, to split ourselves and divide ourselves like that. Because at the end of the day, we're all human.
I get your point, but I do not agree with that as a blanket statement at all. There's way too much hope in there for me. Healthy
Yeah, yeah.
boundaries are absolutely required. Like there are people in my world where I've had those conversations or tried, and I know it will lead nowhere. And for me, it's a mental health and also just a waste of energy for me to engage in those conversations with some people. And so I choose to have that be a salted field. I think what you're saying, if you're going into a situation where you can have that and be playful and inquisitive without in neutrality and have conversations with people you don't know yet, yes. But I believe there are
Yeah.
times like I'm not going into Thanksgiving dinner going, I'm going to have a playful conversation with like that is never going to go anywhere.
Yeah, it's a great point. Wow. So I want to be clear that this is the ideal, and this is not reality. This is not executable information that I'm given. It's the ideal state that we can hopefully get to if we start to spread this information and start to try to get more people to be less divisive. Because at the end of the day, who's right and wrong? Well, it kind of depends on who's writing history.
Well,
And I just,
In a way.
you just what?
Another shitty blanket statement. I get it.
no, I just think I was going to say, I think people get to show up who they are and where they are. And sometimes that just doesn't work with how I show up and where I am and who I am. And I'm okay with that. I don't have to engage with everyone. Or when I engage, I get to choose to then withdraw if it's not going to work. But I don't say that in an avoidance kind of way. I don't believe like avoidance is the answer. And I think that was where you were going in the beginning of what you were talking about, is like, it's not great to go in avoidance mode and avoid all these challenging conversations. And when you show up in a way, especially with people have known for however many years, it sounded like decades to me, Alina, when you were talking, like long, long time, more than half your life, perhaps, then we kind of already know how this is going to go. And to challenge where people are at even in a neutral way, it's still a challenge to them. And it's like, where does that take us? It takes us to stress, which is, you were getting together as friends to be playful and connected. And that was my point I was making last night about choices I was making when going through a divorce. It's like, I had things that I was doing that I told myself were healthy and to de-stress, and they weren't at all. They just built it. And then I had these other choices where it was like, these people that I hang out with, I understand it's actually back to that, it's safe community. It's a safe space. And I know they're reliable and we will show up together. And even when it gets hard or stretchy, or, we know that we will show up in love ultimately. And that's the bottom line. And I think that's so important, to give yourself the grace to say no.
There's all of what you just said, everything, and walking into, I think not a lot of folks across our country will associate the term safe space with Thanksgiving dinner.
No.
I don't think those two correlate for a lot of homes. For the ones that do, great. I think a key ingredient in walking into these dinners for anyone listening in is intentionality. Before you go to the dinner, before you show up, how are you going to show up? What do you hope for in this to get out of this dinner? Right? Is it company of your loved ones? Is it just to see them, to see a smile on their face, to break bread with them? Or is it to like convince them and convert them? And that's what I said at the table when I was, trying to get some kind of unity. It's like, no one's being converted. We've known each other's positions for a long time. Some of the folks have shifted a bit in their positions. Okay. No one's converting anyone. We all respect each other. We respect each other's humanity, intellect, difference in viewpoint. Like that's how it is. So if you're curious about how I feel and my position from a place of curiosity, not conversion, go ahead and ask me. And that's, when I answered the question, at one point the question posed to everybody at the table was, who are you voting for? It's like a little
Drop that bomb in
right?
there, huh?
Look,
Such a leading
that in there.
question.
And
They're stirring the pot looking for trouble.
Right. And
Yeah.
and that was not, I was like, okay, if that's what we're gonna do, let me play along. And the way that I was willing to engage was inform, share. And that's it. It isn't a debate. And when my friends were sharing, some agree, some don't agree with each other. You either listen, you don't say a word if it isn't coming from a place of curiosity. If it's going to come from a place of poking at the person and trying to, make like a Swiss cheese out of their views or point out inconsistencies or trip them up in hopes that they'll see things your way, that's a don't.
Yeah.
It's just not helpful. I think that's the other takeaway. It's like, think about how you want to show up. And that second thing is just ask yourself, is this going to be helpful to the thing that I want to create here? Is it a yes or no?
Love that you brought it there. Because that's what I was going to say is, okay, so how can we preemptively prepare for Thanksgiving? If that's what you celebrate, if that's coming up and this launches before Thanksgiving, how can we preemptively show up in a way that supports ourselves so we can show up in curiosity, in neutrality, and in compassion and love? It's like there's so many different ways and it depends on family dynamics. For me, it was healthy boundaries. I had to prepare them in my head. I can pretty much walk down what conversations are going to come up in my family conversations. So if I'm going prepared of like, do I need a boundary here? Do I need silence here? What do I need to remember? Do I need to remove myself from the room and go for a walk? I have to give myself permission for the different ways I can show up in a healthy way and a way that supports my highest good. And that changed everything for me. It didn't make it easy because when you get in a room with people that you've known forever and have known you forever, it's so easy to suck back into your, forget that you've done the work,
You revert. It's easy to revert back to whatever it is, your 15-year-old self.
Those good old habits. So I have 3 things I'm thinking of right now. Number one is, I don't know about y'all, I am voting for the turd taco.
No, you're not doing that.
I'm voting for the turd taco because the turd sandwich is just not, it's not my style. But really, truthfully, I'm gonna throw out another one of those blanket statements again because I seem to be wanting to be inflammatory today. If we have problems with other people, we can look to one of 2 places. Either we're trying to control somebody else, or we're taking something personally. Almost certainly it's going to be one of these 2 things. I have to control how these other people are acting because I know better. And how much ego is involved in that thought? It's like, the more I know I know nothing. I've had so many strongly held opinions changed for me that I don't hold on to very many opinions very strongly anymore. So I don't have the need to control other people, and because that's just preemptively it's a thing of, oh, I'm right, therefore I need to move them to my side. Well, what gives you the right to be right? What makes you so fucking smart that you think you're right? I've had my ass handed to me way too many times for on things that I thought I was right about and then ended up being wrong. Like I wish I was half as smart now as I was whenever I was 18. So, and
Amen
then
to that.
yeah. And then the other thing, taking things personally. Once again, the ego is involved.
Yeah. I love, and you know what? Like the whole controlling other people thing, that's sneaky because for a long time when I got to a certain point in doing the work and I actually felt how much easier my life was and how much more joyful I felt on the inside, I really wanted that for other people, and that got really messy and muddy,
Mhm.
and the amount of ego of me wanting it for other people and wanting them to want it too was so gross.
Oh, how smug,
It
right?
was so
How
gross. And it
smug.
was like my closest people, right? It was like my family members and my closest friends. I just wanted it for them. And I would do everything to like push that, and pushing it versus doors open. I love that you said that last night. Doors open. That's a very different thing. Live by example, live your life in your best way possible. And that is way more inspiring than, hey, I want this for you. Don't you know your life can be better? You're doing it wrong.
Right. It's like shoving through somebody through that door versus like leaving it open and up to them to enter.
I'm at a place now where I don't think there's a wrong way. I think if you choose to suffer, you get to choose to suffer. And there's something in that for you.
Yes.
And you get to accept that for you.
Yes.
And that doesn't make you less than, or if you choose not to deep dive into the healing journey or the personal growth and transformation, I don't think that makes you a bad person. I think it makes you where you are at right now, and you're just as lovable as the next person. And that's an amazing, beautiful thing. And I didn't used to think that way because when I was stuck, I was so fucking miserable that I thought, well, I don't want anybody else to hurt this bad. And that is why I do what I do, but I don't think everybody wants that. And I'm not attached to that anymore. And I was very attached to that when I first started.
So go ahead and take that microphone real quick and just pick it up, and then I want you to just drop it.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
It's like exactly what you were saying, Lee. It's just like, it's so freaking true. That control piece. It's so sneaky though of how it comes in. And I never used to see the sneaky shit. And then I would be like, then when you see it, like the amount of shame I would have, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm a horrible human. What an asshole.
It's the
Like,
whole
what
idea.
a dick.
When Lee and I were training and in our coaching, doing our coaching training, that's one of the key tenets is you hold the client's agenda, not yours.
Yeah.
It's not what you want if you were them, because you know better. It's tuning in and meeting them where they are and
Yep.
journeying with them.
Yeah, we can't have
That's
a
it.
need to get somebody somewhere, because then that we're just attached to them getting somewhere. And then it's about us and it's not about them.
All about
Right.
us.
Ego. Here we go.
Always. Always. So bringing it back to, and we're talking about, I mean, okay, Thanksgiving is the upcoming holiday. Whatever you celebrate, that's one. It's generally, we could talk about, right, family gatherings or gatherings with people who know us for a long time, gatherings with people that we're emotionally invested in, where there's history, whatever the occasion is, like a Wednesday luncheon, whatever it is. It's how do we, and I think I'm summing up what we've talked about so far. We've talked about intentionality, how we want to show up, checking in on whether what we're about to say or do is helpful or not. Michelle talked about boundaries, kind of deciding in advance. Those are the things that we can prep before we go to dinner, to that meal, to that gathering. And Lee talked about checking in with yourself. Like, is it from place of control? Is it from place of ego? Those check-ins are great. If everybody at the table did them, it would have been a lovely, peaceful dinner, and we could have talked about some raunchy, fun topics.
Yeah.
And that would have been
Managing
it.
our energy and our mood beforehand too, because the days leading up to said event also make a huge difference. Because if we've been absolutely frazzled for the days before we go in frazzled, then we're going to be automatically more irritable. You can see irritability right here on our stress chart, right? If we're already irritable, then it takes less to set us off.
And
Yeah, this is going to sound so weird, but lengthen that fuse as much as you can. Going in short fuse to any situation is a horrible idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
and you might not be able to shift into the place that you want to in time for that meal. Being aware of where you are at the moment, that alone is more than half the battle. Just knowing, okay, I'm entering this dinner in a slightly irritable way. I feel drained. So let me just, I'm just going to know that. That alone can stop a whole lot of unhelpful behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just got a vision of like a dumpster being full, and then we go wave that dumpster around everywhere just to get that odor all nice and spread everywhere. It's like, ooh, wee. Let's
Yeah.
get odor stench.
Yeah. So let me give it to my closest, nearest, and dearest people.
Yep.
They'll
Exactly.
take it.
I'm glad you finished my point for me there. I'm serious. I wasn't being sarcastic that time.
Oh.
Because that was definitely a loose end.
I'm going to take a sip.
I think going back to like the scale that we talked about last night, the 1 to 10.
I think
Yeah.
Alina was thinking about helicopters.
No, I was thinking about scales.
Scale 1 to 10.
We're talking about stress, right?
Yeah.
We're talking
Yeah.
about
And so knowing where you're at, like if you're going in really tender and raw and feeling extra sensitive or like in a wound or knowing that the trigger is right there at the cusp, knowing that going in might mean you shorten the length of time that you stay, or it might just mean that you're more quiet than usual, or it might mean that you need to take a good run before you get there. Like there's a lot of like healthy coping mechanisms that we can do to just, but to really, I don't know, I'm just really feeling like giving yourself grace and knowing where you're at. And if you are in a place where you're extra tender, to allow yourself to show up differently than you have in the past. Like to invite yourself to do that.
Yeah.
So that you can show up in kindness for yourself first, which everyone thinks is selfish. But I think it will actually enhance your relationships versus harm them.
100%. And the very first choice is choosing to engage to begin with, choosing to enroll and attend the dinner.
Yeah.
Or the gathering, because that's always a choice too. Understanding that, especially if you're anticipating tension, conflict, discomfort, and all that mental gymnastics and all of that preparation that we're willing to go and do must mean that the payoff is greater, right? Payoff of attending and being there with those people is greater than the cost of than what it costs you in all that self-management, all of that, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a walk. Here's what I'm going to say. Here's what we're not going to talk about. All of that. It's a decision.
And if you haven't explored what works for you, find what works for you. And there's not a lot of time to find what works for you right now. We're a month away, but you probably have friends that can support you. Like find at least one thing that can support you in something that is, like I said, go for a run, but that's not for everybody. Like I'm not saying what your thing is. I'm saying find your things and invite them in for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of a battery analogy. We go into these situations with a battery that has a certain amount of charge on it, and there are certain things that will happen that drain the charge. And when we get to, the red zone of our charge, then stuff starts to boil over at that point. And finally, eventually, when we get to empty, that's whenever it's time for the big blow up, the big explosion, whatever it is. So there are certain people, certain circumstances, certain conversations that I'll steer away from because I know they drain my battery. For instance, there's quite a few certain people I can think of right off the top of my head that to be in conversation with them, it's always negative. It's always poor, pitiful me, victimhood. And to listen to that just sucks the life out of me. It's like, oh, you poor baby. So I choose, like, I'm going to give these people 5% of my battery or 10% of my battery. Only going to allow them so much time, and then I'm going to go somewhere else. Because I love them. They're my family,
Hmm.
and they suck the life out of me. So I'm not going to avoid them completely, but I'm going to set a limit for how much I'm willing to give to that.
A beautiful, healthy boundary.
Mhm.
Yeah. Unhealthy boundaries are I'm going to make sure that you are going to do this and that and this and that. And uh,
That's not a
Oh,
boundary.
that's
That's
not,
a demand.
that's
exactly.
right. The
We're right
boundaries.
back to control, right? Boundaries aren't trying to control other people. It's trying to control what we're willing to take in, what we're willing to subject ourselves to.
And
Mhm.
another layer to that, boundaries are actually to teach people how to treat you, to help them learn what you will and won't accept.
Rules of engagement.
That's tough whenever we've had a certain set of behaviors that we've stuck to for so long. And now there's all these expectations of how we are going to operate in the space. And to come in and do a complete 180 can be shocking. What the hell crawled up Becky's ass?
Right. Well, when you're entering dynamics where people know you, they're used to a certain behavior, this is what they've always, this is how they've always known you.
Mm.
And there may be reaction. Sure. There
And
may
to
be a
be
little bit of,
fair,
what's that?
there's likely going to be, they get that. Like you're totally feel different to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And there might be a little bit of poking, a little bit of like, well, what's that? You're not gonna do that now? You're not gonna really?
Johnny
It's not
said
different.
recently in a conversation we were having, like, no can be a complete sentence.
Yeah.
True.
Think about the people pleasers out there right now, and that they're so used to saying yes to everything they're asked to do, take on everybody else's responsibilities, and
Mm.
eventually got to set those boundaries up, like, and say no and stick to it. Because if we set a boundary and then don't stick to it, then it's not actually a boundary.
Mhm.
Can't have those flexible boundaries. It's like I am going to not take on X and then stick to it.
Yeah.
The other piece of that, no being a complete sentence, is
Mm-hmm.
you don't owe them an explanation. Do you know how hard it is not to over explain and to
Mm-hmm.
justify why you're saying no? I'm thinking that those are cards in the healthy boundaries deck that Dan and I wrote in the journal. It's like no is a complete sentence and you do not owe them an explanation.
Mhm.
Set the boundary and move on. It's a salted field. You don't talk about it anymore. It's done.
There's this idea of a proving energy, the energy to, right, I need to keep proving it to you. So it's right. If it's a no, and then it keeps going, right? It's not a complete sentence. It's no, but let me explain you why and make you feel much better about the no. I really want you to be comfortable with the no. So please approve, for your approval, please. And then you start explaining and justifying, eating away at your very boundary and at yourself. And that proving energy is just it's a drain and a waste of resources.
Look,
Doesn't help.
I'm gonna give everybody a why right now because Lee said so.
That's your blanket answer. You don't even owe him that, though. I'm just saying, you don't owe him an explanation. None,
No,
not one.
Yeah,
I'm
you
trying to help.
don't.
That's all.
Yeah.
You
You
don't.
say no, and they go, well, why? Well, because Lee said so. Well, who's Lee? Well, the guy on the podcast. Um,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Don't do that. No's a complete sentence.
Boundaries are hard,
Very hard.
especially for the overgivers. I mean, I think they're hard for everyone. And overgivers, there is just something.
You know. I
Yeah.
worry sometimes that my sarcasm might go over people's heads. What were you saying, Lena?
I was saying that it's saying no. I talk about compassionate boundaries, right? Because the boundary isn't, right. The spirit of it isn't to poke at the other person.
Mm.
It isn't in any way, or it shouldn't be, vengeful. It shouldn't be to get back at someone. It is simply about protecting your soul, your peace, your core, and drawing a line. And that can be done compassionately, right? With a compassionate intention, where an understanding that the other person may not necessarily be trying to dismantle you. They're not trying to take you down. They're not trying to harm you. They are doing the best of what they know. If they knew better, they likely would have done better. So this is how they operate. There's a compassion in recognizing that lovingly, like Uncle Bob, I love you. Here's where I am. How are you?
As you started talking, I got a vision of the opposite of the compassionate boundary. It's like the child that's like stomping their feet and sticking their chest out and going, "No."
Yeah,
Kind of
exactly.
lashing out, kind of no.
Yeah. Right. Reactive. Exactly. Exactly. That's the opposite. So a compassionate boundary is like, I love you all. And we all want to, like, I want us to be here. I love that we're here together. We're going to be kind to each other. We're not going to step on each other. I want to play nice. Let's see. Who doesn't blink longest?
Oh, speaking of that little kid, huh? From here on out, I say we play the game where Alina says something amazing. We'll just leave like 15 seconds of silence. Let's see how many seconds of silence you can get from here on out.
I like that contest.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Pressure's on.
You're on the spot now. Fantastic. I think I'm gonna hit the button.
Yeah.
I like it.
Thank you for listening to That's a Great Point with Alina Doran, Michelle Aalbers, and Lee Smart. To find out more about how we can serve you, check out our links in the show description. Thanks for playing along.